Welcome to the Empty Nest Kitchen, where we're finding fun in the kitchen now that the kids have flown the coop. I'm Christine Van Bloom, a cooking teacher with over 25 years of experience, here to show you tips, tricks, and joy in your kitchen, all while trying something new. Let's get cooking.
Well, hello, everyone. I am absolutely delighted, as always, with my guest here today. I think this is going to be a heck of a conversation. Say hello and welcome with me to Elizabeth Cromwell. Hey there.
Hello. Nice to be with you.
Oh my gosh, I am so delighted that you said yes to this because you have a story that I think people want to know. You're
Well,
like, yeah.
so I mean, I don't know that my story is that remarkable, but it feels
No,
like I had a pretty great couple of years. So
you
I'm
have.
fortunate.
Oh my gosh. So Elizabeth and I first met, we were in the same town here on the East Coast in Maryland, and our paths crossed professionally. And now tell me where you are.
I am, ever since January of this year, I am living in San Francisco, which is a city that I lived in from 1990 to 1999. And so immediately before I discovered our town in Maryland, I'd been living here. And so it's with great delight that I find myself back here again. And I live in a beautiful, small, almost like a birdhouse overlooking San Francisco Bay, just at the base of Coit Tower on Telegraph Hill.
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, I've only visited one time, but I swear the plane touched down and I felt like I was home. I just think San Francisco is the most glorious place.
It is, it's had some rough press over the last few years, and there's been some problems with the city, but I have to say that, some of the changes that have happened because of the pandemic and other reasons have actually made some of the neighborhoods, in my opinion, a little bit nicer. Not quite as expensive as it used to be. A lot of the folks who had decided to work from home have left San Francisco and in some cases left California. And while that on the one hand kind of sounds doom and gloomy, on the other hand, it's a much more livable city to me in a lot of the neighborhoods around here.
Oh, I love it. So there's still a chance for me there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, all right. So I want you to tell me how you got, because you have gone through some big changes
Mhm.
here and you have really embraced change and challenge, and in a way that I think a lot of women, I don't want to lump you in and say our age because I'm an old bag, but in a way that empty nest women, I think sometimes are afraid or nervous to do, and you went for it. So give everybody a little background.
Mhm. Well, I agree. I do think there's a lot of women who probably wouldn't take the approach that I've taken over the last few years, but a lot that probably would too. So I guess I'll back up just a few years and say that I moved to Charlottesville, Virginia in 2000. I moved there for a job and didn't know the community very well. I was fairly kind of in the process of getting divorced too. And it just so happened that my daughter was heading off to college. So there was a lot of empty nesting kind of happening. And so I moved to Charlottesville, and it was shortly after the Unite the Right rally there.
Oh,
And my work was related to trying to help the community sort of improve, especially the business community, which took an enormous hit over that situation. So needless to say, I was there for 4 years, and the post Unite the Right rally time there was extremely stressful and extremely challenging.
I
And
can't imagine.
to be. Yeah. And then the pandemic happened as well. And so it was a pretty intense 4 years, I'd say. And as I found myself, I'm more of a night owl than an early bird, honestly. And I started to find myself kind of late at night, just starting to scroll around maps. And I didn't even realize I was doing it, at first. And so I'd be looking at Google Maps and I was just sort of looking all over the world without realizing I was like subconsciously trying to figure out, I want to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Then I started looking at Airbnb, their website. And again, it was sort of subconsciously, I started looking at where could I live for $1,000 a month or less? And just like looking at the whole globe that way. And it turns out there's a ton of places you can do that. And particularly if you are flexible about when you go, and if you're off season in some places, you can live substantially less than that. And so that kind of got me thinking that maybe I'm at a point in my life where I want to take some time off. I know I'm not in the right spot right now, but I don't know what to do next. I don't know where I want to be. And it just all of a sudden kind of came to me that I need to spend like a year just kind of decompressing and figuring out what's next. So I talked to a couple of my closest old friend. She's an executive coach and does a lot of work with corporate leaders. And she also knows me really well. And she knows my mom. And she said, I totally support you doing this. I think this is a great idea for you to go on an adventure for about a year and kind of decide, make the right next choice. And she said, but I really recommend that you call it something and that you put a frame around it and that you add some really specific structure to what you're doing. Because if you don't, people are going to think you've lost your mind. If you just get rid of everything, get rid of basically all of your possessions, which I did, hand in your apartment keys, quit your job and leave the country. It doesn't look that stable.
I know, but it looks, I mean, it's and I remember we're Facebook friends,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So I got to see the edited version of what's going out. And it felt to me, it was so inspiring when I saw that you were doing that. And did you call it a sabbatical? Is that what
I
you call
I
it?
did because
Yeah.
it was really just kind of more shorthand for me because to try to explain what I was doing, when you say sabbatical to someone, they're like, "Oh, okay. She's going away for a little bit. She'll be back. She's just taking a breather." And,
Yeah.
some people are like, "Are you on vacation?" I'm like, "Not really. This is like I'm just living my life right now." So I did call it a sabbatical, but I really was grateful to my friend for having this conversation with me because I did really kind of start to structure it by 4 quarters. And each quarter had a
Okay.
sort of a different location, a different kind of area of focus, and a different sort of theme, I guess, if you will. Theme might be a little too specific, but I really did look at, my first quarter was all about kind of getting myself back into shape a little bit. Uh,
Okay.
I don't mean working out. I mean just like going somewhere and, making my own food for the first time in a
Yeah.
time and just climbing very, very steep villages that I was living in for 3 months and I did. So I didn't realize how exhausted I was until the world stopped spinning. So the first quarter was really just about like building up my endurance again, which was great. And then the second quarter, I mean, each one had a different focus. And so, I mean, I can run through them all. I don't need to, but
Were they in different locations or were
yes.
they all in the same?
No, they were all in different
Okay.
locations. Yeah.
Okay. So where was first quarter?
So first quarter, I spent 3 months in Italy. And the first month, and again, we're talking about off season.
Right.
So the weather was good most of the time. It wasn't like going in right like you would right now. But it was also, people were thrilled to have you in their towns. They were thrilled for random people to turn up out of season. So in March, I stayed in Assisi in Umbria. in April, I stayed in a city called Salerno, which is on the Amalfi Coast. And then in May, I flew over to Sardinia and I stayed in Cagliari, which is an unbelievable, I mean, Sardinia is a really unique place and not really like the rest of Italy. It's its own world over there. So I spent the first 3 months there. And again, just coming back to, the financials of it, I had a beautiful 2-bedroom, enormous apartment in Assisi with a view of the entire valley. It had both a piano and an organ in my apartment because there's so many churches there. They have a lot of visiting musicians. But anyway, that apartment, if you rent it by the month off season, is about $35 a day. So
Wow.
all in, all in. That's all of your, high-speed internet is beautifully furnished. And so that just kind of gives you an example is that's about $1,000 a month for everything.
Wow.
And that's doable. So that's that kind of everything I did beyond that cost a little bit more. The other places cost a little more, but not much. I mean, I was staying on the Amalfi Coast. I think my apartment was between 1,100 and 1,200 a month. Now that was a 6-story walk up,
Oh,
but
yeah.
the fun of it. I had a great view.
And great legs, I bet, too.
Going back to that cardio that I needed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally love to visit places in the off season. I love it. It's super simple, not comparable to the Amalfi Coast, of course. But I have a friend who has a condo at the beach, and my very favorite thing is to go in like January, February with her when it's bitter cold and windy and awful. That's my favorite, that's
I
my
love
favorite
that
time.
too. And I love the people that you find in those places.
Yeah.
Sort of a little bit more offbeat or just sort of more interesting, I think, than surrounding yourself with other tourists. So it's nice.
I think there's a romance to that, right? To being there in the unpopular time,
Yeah.
right? I
Well,
like that.
I like that too. And that Assisi example, that was the first month out of my year plus thing. And the host there was so nice to me that she invited me to her family's home for Sunday dinner on a couple of occasions. Her son-in-law's works at a winery there, and she set
Oh,
up wine tasting for me. And that's the kind of stuff they won't have time to do in June or July.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you're there in March, they really want to show you, everything that they have there. So I felt like I was really lucky. Now, I didn't expect it to be colder and rainier in April than in March because I traveled from Assisi down to the Amalfi Coast, which is like, 400 kilometers south. And it rained quite a bit that month, but I didn't really care. But I just wasn't, you have to sort of prepare if you're traveling for a year. I had clothing to go take me from the snow to the summer. So I had to make sure that I knew what I had and where everything was. So I had to be really organized.
That is so cool. I'm picturing like what you're carrying with you as you go on all of this. So, quarter one, just kind of you said getting in shape, but it's kind of mentally as well as physically, right?
Yeah, decompression.
Decompression. I am all about decompression. So, quarter one, Italy. Quarter two, where'd you head?
So quarter two, I had an idea in my head that I might want to move back to San Francisco. So part of this year-long thing was to make sure that I came out here and experienced it somewhat. So
Yeah,
between each quarter, I would, of course, stop back in Maryland to visit my mom for a few days. So I left her
nice.
place and drove cross country by myself across the South. So I took me through, Tennessee and Natchez, Mississippi, and across West Texas and Arizona and Palm Springs and stuff like that. And then I eventually arrived in San Francisco. And then after I spent my time out here, I drove cross country back across the north. So I came through Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, and that whole loop back that way. And a lot of the summer was I was working on, I'm trying to think of the name of the group, Trusted House Sitters. And so this is an organization. It's really very interesting for people in my position who don't necessarily have a steady place to live and are flexible about moving around and caring for people's houses and pets. And so it's a pretty great organization. It costs about, I think it's about $100 a year, maybe something like that, 150 maybe. But
So cool.
yeah, so you pay that amount and then you go through a background check. And everyone who has a house does the same thing. And so they go
Okay.
through a background check too. And then as soon as that's complete, which is very quick and easy, then their website is exactly like an Airbnb, except everything on it is free. And
Oh my goodness.
yeah, so you can sort by location or dates, but you can also sort by like pets. Like I don't want to take care of any dogs or I just like rabbits or whatever. There's a lot of like horse farms in France, and places like that. It's global. So I ended up doing some of that through the summer out here on the West Coast. And I guess I would say my theme for that quarter was really seeing whether coming back, can you come back? Is there any coming back home again here? And
Yeah.
after spending a number of weeks here, I definitely was just, I decided, I was like, yes, I would love to move back here. So I would say an extremely long road trip and sort of help planning for post sabbatical was part of my quarter two.
That's incredible. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to put the trusted house sitters, I will put that in the show notes
Oh,
because I know you just mentioning it. I know there is someone out there who just felt like a tickle go down her spine because
yeah,
she's
yeah.
thinking, what? So, all right. So that's quarter two. Quarter three, where'd you go?
So quarter three, gosh, they were all rewarding, but this one may have been the most, I don't know, not spiritually rewarding, but I felt the best about it probably. So I went to my cousin's house. And part of this whole sabbatical planning thing is really trying to figure out if you can figure out where you're going to put your head down and go to sleep every night, the rest will come together. So I was asking family and friends, and normally I don't like to stay at people's houses because I feel like it's intrusive, but I just pulled out all the stops with everybody. I'm like, hey, I have an idea. Can I come stay with you for a while?
Have you changed your mind on that now that you've done it some?
I'm not sure. I think
Okay.
not 100%. I mean, it worked out great for me, but I think I brought everybody into here's my little year-long adventure. Here's my
Yeah.
sabbatical thing. And you'd be amazed at how many people like want to be the hero in your story.
I love having people stay.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I love being the hero. I do. I'm
I
a
can totally see that.
I love it. Like I have adult nieces and nephews and whatnot. And when one is like, I'm like, yes. And it's like rolling out the red carpet. And I love when people come. I love to show the love. So it's so
You're
interesting.
also a born entertainer. You know how to do it. And
Wow.
you're very good at it.
As
So
long as I can be in bed by 9, I'm solid. I'm
well,
ridiculous.
my cousin lives out on Martha's Vineyard with her husband,
Oh,
and they
great.
have two kids. Again, we're talking about off season. And
Hmm.
so I knew that they have a small rental unit that they close up after Labor Day, and it doesn't really get used again until the spring. And so my cousin Kate, is an amazing woman who has started a nonprofit called the Island Autism Group, and it's for individuals and family members of individuals who have autism. And there are quite a few on the island, just as there who live there year round, just like everywhere else. I think the latest numbers are that 1 in 45
Wow.
kids is diagnosed with some area on the spectrum. And so her son has autism, and she created this organization. And the goal of it is to really focus on adults, really, And, there's care and appropriate enrichment activities for that population really until they turn 22. And then when they turn 22, it's kind of over. And so her goal was to create a place for kids to come and do things, but also adults to actually live on a farm where they grow. It's very self-sustaining. So they have chickens where they sell eggs at the farmer's market and flowers that they sell bouquets at the farmer's market. But they have a whole bunch of other kind of workforce development things they're working on, and it's beautiful. And so I was able to parlay this project into me going out there for 3 months and helping her with, helping pick out paint colors. They're building it right now. And there was a barn raising while I was there. And I actually got chicken eggs out of the coop, which terrified me, but I did it. And sold them at the farmer's market. And so,
oh my gosh.
yeah, so it was an opportunity for me to volunteer a kind of not insignificant amount of time. A lot of that time that I was able to offer, I don't really know much about the island or its year-round residents or autism for that sake, but I know a fair amount at this point in my life about nonprofit management, board governance, financials, succession planning.
Yeah.
So my punishment for all of that is I'm now the finance chair on the board of the island.
Oh, they're lucky to have you because you do understand that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all
Yeah.
have little areas of expertise, and I wanted to barter them basically for in exchange for an absolutely beautiful place to stay
Yeah.
off season. And so I was out there for 3 months. That was the third quarter.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I've been to the Vineyard and it's just, it's breathtaking. It's just so beautiful. All right. So quarter 4, where'd you head?
Quarter four, I actually had to cut off a little part of the end of that, which I'll explain why in a second, but it was actually good that that happened at the end. So the fourth quarter started with me coming back to Maryland to spend the holidays with my mother, and I got to travel up and down the East Coast and see lots of cousins that I hadn't seen. So Thanksgiving and Christmas, I had a lot of reconnection with family members, which was really wonderful. And then my last hurrah was supposed to be in Guatemala, where I have a family member who lives in Antigua, Guatemala. And I was going to go down there with my cousin, and my cousin wanted to learn Spanish because her grandbabies are Spanish speaking. But unfortunately, there was an election there around that
Oh.
time that became quite hotly contested. And
Oh.
the incumbent lost the election to a reform candidate. But the guy who lost said, I'm not leaving office. You can just forget it. And so all this unrest happened. And it was around that time, and we were unable to make the trip, which was okay. So I finished up a month early and
Okay.
came out to San Francisco to my new home. So that's how it all worked out in the end. And I guess when you take all of that together, there's a bunch of little pieces that happen. But I would say in the end, I think when you put it all together, I'm in, better shape. I'm happier. And I feel like I'm exactly where I should be. And I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't gone on this walkabout.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it gives you such opportunity to look at your perspective and change your perspective and adapt and kind of figure from there. But my question for you is having a structure, a loose structure was really beneficial to you,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What advice would you give to the gal who's out there who you just pushed her over the edge and she's ready to do this and embrace this? What would be your one big piece of advice?
I, I've talked to a fair number of women about this. I think this seems to have struck a chord with a lot of people of our age because I'm an old bag too. So I'll be I'll be 60 in a couple of months. So
Oh, I'm going to be 57 in a couple of
yeah,
months,
I'm an old bag.
but you look incredible. I look like a crumpled paper
Oh,
bag. Oh
please,
my God. But
please. But anyway,
I love calling myself an old bag.
I
I
love
do.
an old
I
bag.
embrace it.
Awesome. Yeah,
I embrace it.
I
So, all right,
and
number
so
one piece.
I guess all of that actually ties into the advice I was going to say is a lot of women I've met or who've asked me about this adventure have a lot of fear about doing it. And the fear that I seem to hear more often than anything else is just guilt about it. They just want permission. It's not like people are not afraid of traveling around the world and people are not afraid. I mean, I'm just generalizing here.
Sure.
And other people, are not really at the point where they're worried about the financial piece of it, like I kind of was. But they're afraid of people looking down on them if they put themselves first. They're afraid of what will my family think. Sometimes there is, a partner that they're worried about, wouldn't be supportive of this, but they want to go alone. And a lot of it's just sort of like people are going to look down on me if I indulge myself in this way. And I've gotten that a lot, especially, I've met a number of women who are widows and they actually have the means to do this, but they just think it wouldn't look right.
Oh,
And
no.
my advice is just to, stop caring about that. I think doing something like this for yourself is actually doing everybody around you a favor too. And, you're getting yourself kind of a lot more focused, and that makes everybody around you understand you better. But I've heard that a lot. I've heard a lot of women like, oh, I could never do that. I have to, chair the whatever committee meeting once a month, and people don't care if you don't do that. I mean, there are certain moments in your life where everything kind of aligns. Like in my case, it was like, I don't have to take care of somebody after school right now. I'm not in a job that I see myself in very much longer. And I'm in a community that I don't think is actually where I want to put down roots. And there's certain points in your life when that kind of stuff lines up, you have to go for it. So that would be my advice is just don't be afraid. Just start. And start if you, I mean, you don't have to like go across the world either. You could start like what you're saying is go to the beach, do your own thing for a few days or set something up, but be really, I kind of hate this word intentional, but be intentional about it. Like plan what you want to get out of it and then go do it.
Oh, I love that. I hate the word passion, just so you know. Just so that you hate intentional, I hate passion. I hate it. I hate it so much. But I totally embrace what you're saying because I have said it to people too about it's kind of if not now, when,
Right.
right? And it's also, I just don't care as much. I can't say I don't care, but I can say I don't care as much
Mhm.
because the people that I love and love me, they know who I am, they know what I'm going for. And I think with all the relatives that you've been able to stay with and all of that, I think you've got the same thing there.
Yeah, totally. And I think if you sort of think about it in this more holistic way of thinking about here's whatever period of time you feel like you can take to do it, like think about everybody in your life, and think about people that maybe you miss connecting with or spending time with. My cousin in Martha's Vineyard, she and I grew up together and we were really close, but we hadn't really spent time together in 25 years, probably at least. And so think about people like that, or think about the talent that you have that you might be able to lend to others. You're like, I don't want to get paid for it, but I do want, some lead on a place to stay for a month or two,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like cast your net really wide and you'll be surprised how much is out there.
Okay. I know you've been asked this question. I absolutely know you have. Are you writing a book?
Oh, oh, I have been asked that question. No, I'm not writing a book.
Oh,
It's not,
okay.
but I will tell you that there are a couple of ideas floating around about more of a television show idea.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so
I
I haven't
love it.
done anything with that yet, but I do have some people in that world that have asked about that. So yeah, maybe.
Ah, I love it. It's like I know you've heard comparisons to Eat, Pray, Love,
Yeah.
but it's more, I don't know, I almost feel like it's deeper on a certain level. Nothing against Elizabeth Gilbert. I will forever read everything she writes. I love her. But I think when your kid goes and then you had a divorce that you were dealing with, it's just, I don't know, it's just such an opportunity. And I love that you seized it so much. And
Now I love what you're doing with Empty Nest Kitchen and just
oh,
the way that you're looking at this time in your life is exactly how I look at it too. And I hear sometimes women say, like, after you turn whatever age, that you're invisible or whatever, or they feel sort of disappointed about that. And honestly, I could not care less about that. And I actually love it. The stuff you can do when you're invisible is pretty awesome. And
it's so cool, right?
yes, and I love the fact that at this age, I don't really care what
Yeah.
I don't really care what the world thinks of me. Of course, it's important to me to be a good human being and a nice person and all that kind of stuff. But when you get to be this age, you can really not worry about a lot of stuff that maybe mattered once, but doesn't matter to you anymore. And it's a great time of life.
It is. I think I am happier now than I have ever been. And I know part of it is kids are hard. Like, I don't care if you have like a gold star, perfect child. Kids are hard. Raising a kid with someone else is hard. Raising a kid on your own is hard. Kids are just tough. So I think you develop this freedom when you set them off in the world and they're doing their own thing, and you can trust who they are and what they're doing. And even if you can't, that's their call now,
Mhm.
right? And I love the freedom of it. I love so much freedom, and I love not caring. I mean, heck, I started a podcast, for heaven's sake. Who cares?
This is excellent, by the way.
Oh, stop it. Well, I could not be more delighted. I'm just so thrilled that you agreed to do this. And whatever you produce, write, talk on podcasts about, I will be the first person in line to read, listen, or watch, because I just admire your chutzpah and your, bravery as you charge forth. So thank you for being on today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, you're amazing. All right, everyone. So I'm going to put some links in the show notes, and I hope that you were as enthralled with every word that Elizabeth was saying as I was, because this is the attitude we need in our empty nest life. So thank you. And everyone, I will see you in the kitchen.